You know, when I watched the movie, The Green Book, I was curious to explore the reality of what was called sundown towns, about how a group of people weren't welcome in a community when the sun went down, and particularly in this case, African Americans. Then I recalled that Lou Bradley, one of our members, had told me after a sermon I had preached or a conversation we had had, she had told me that she grew up in a town in Indiana that had on their welcome sign, "No blacks after dark." I don't think it said it quite that way, but that's what it meant. And so I looked into it. I was curious. And what did I discover? I discovered that most of the sundown towns were in the north. Let me say that again. Most of the sundown towns were in the north. There was a different kind of segregated apparatus that was present in the south. But in the north, there was a clear willingness for communities and municipal leaders to declare that they were going to be white only, just like a candidate just did for an office here in Michigan, saying that she'd prefer a community to be all white. And so I looked into it a little bit further, and I found out that many of the rural areas and small towns, like the one where Lou Bradley grew up, was a sundown town. Any of you have an experience growing up in a place, or your parents in a place that was like a sundown town? Raise your hand if you remember. I see some folks. I see some other hands. Now, it wasn't always expressed that way, but it was very much a suburban reality, because then that makes sense because of white flight. And do you know that even as late as the 1970s, one of the largest cities in Michigan was, in effect, a sundown town, Warren, Michigan, 180,000 people. And yet you really weren't going to be caught there after dark if you were African American, because people had left Detroit to create an enclave that would be separate and unwelcoming. Now, lest we feel we're exempt, my research found that back in the 1920s here in Kalamazoo, according to Fred Lilly, who was the head of the local chapter of the NAACP, blacks weren't allowed downtown after 10 p.m. Another of Jesus' teachings that's important for us in this context is from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, as you're trying to take the speck out of someone else's eye, when we're trying to correct someone else in our society who has a benighted idea about inclusion, take a look at the log in your own. And so I challenge myself, and I challenge all of us to look at the ways in which we've been biased. Oh, maybe by not intention, but we've been a part of it.